Hey everyone, this is Kate Johnson. We're starting now at 2 p.m. on Wednesday in September 2019. We're going to have our first Ask Amanda. If anyone here is online, will you please type a comment in so I can know that y'all... Oh, I know you can't hear me. Can y'all hear me now? Maybe you could hear me. I'm bringing Amanda on. Someone jump in on a comment early. And we're bringing in Amanda Aguillard, our guest today. Hey.
Hey. How are you?
Well, I can hear you. Is anyone else there? I see a few other people are on the call.
I can hear you just fine.
Tell us if you can hear us.
I don't know about the rest of the audience, but I hear you just fine.
Well, while we're waiting for more people to join us, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are? Why should we listen to what you have to say?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Amanda Aguillard. I'm a CPA with a practice in New Orleans, but I don't have a traditional practice anymore. So I came from a big firm and then had two babies back to back, like 16 months apart, and stopped working for a long time. So I didn't work for like 7 years. And then I want to go. So I started my own deal, and I didn't really start any meant to do. Was just to do some contract work to be able to, provide for my family. At the time I was going through a divorce. And so what was most important to me was being flexible, having flexibility to be able to get us through that transition. And so I was like, I'll just take a couple of clients here or there. And that was 7 years ago. And now okay. I have an accounting practice.
Awesome. And one thing that's I think interesting about you is that whole accounting practice has pretty much been a virtual firm this whole time, right?
Yeah, no, it has. Yeah. So when I started the practice in 2012, 13, that was really the beginning of the cloud, of like cloud technology and accounting. And because I was trying to be present for my children and trying to be available to them wherever in the world we were. And I say that like tongue in cheek. I always had grand plans of like, oh, we're going to, go to Europe and we're going to do all these things. In reality, it's like we go to small towns for travel soccer or travel basketball, but the principle still applies. That
right.
I wanted to build the practice in the cloud entirely from the beginning so that wherever we were, I could run my practice. I mean, and that could have been, rather than being in an office, it could have been being at home because the kids were sick. So I really consciously made that decision from day one that it was going to be a cloud-based practice.
Awesome. Well, that's a great intro. I know just from my interaction with you over the last year that you're definitely someone to listen to in this space. I know I've learned a lot from you and your training company and just a lot of the resources you put out for the industry. So we're going to jump right in. Just kind of a little to frame this, y'all. This is just the chance for people who are new, who don't have, like Amanda reached out to me actually and said, I'd love to be able to just like support the group in some way. And we didn't know what that would look like. And our best solution now is just to maybe somehow on the regular, we don't know how often. I mean, if it's beneficial, we might be able to do it more often if it's something y'all like, but just to be able to ask questions. So everything from like, maybe like what's a debit and a credit? Because she's had lots of accounting classes to how do I build quickly or how do I go completely virtual? So this is your chance to ask questions. I have a couple that I have like in the queue if we need to, that I think might be good, but I would much prefer for y'all to be the ones asking questions. So type them in the comments and we will go from here. Amanda, there's about 5 questions that have been submitted ahead of time. So hold on, what is this topic? Melissa, I'm not fully understanding your comment. So if you could retype that, we'll get to yours. But I'm going to start with one that's already been submitted, Amanda, for now,
Sure,
okay?
Sure.
All right, so let's start with Michelle Bryant asked, how do you choose a software to use? Do you purchase the software online or do you purchase it in a store? How would you answer that?
So I I would confidently say you're going to buy something that's a cloud-based package. Meaning for general ledgers, either Xero, which is my preference, or QBO, QuickBooks Online. And there are a lot of reasons for that. One is that it allows for flexibility. So you can access your software wherever you are as long as you have a web browser. So
Okay.
literally a couple years ago, my daughter left her MacBook Pro. Now, I'm not a Mac user. I know there are Mac people that they're like completely devoted to Mac. I'm a PC girl. But my daughter had left her MacBook in the back seat of the car when she got up for school one morning. And I looked at my calendar and realized that I had about an hour to kill because I had a doctor's appointment. I just grabbed her MacBook and I was working. Like I went to a coffee shop with her computer and was working. And that's possible because these cloud-based softwares, Xero, QBO, a lot of the third-party apps are browser driven, meaning you can go to any web browser, type in a web address, log in, and access what you need. That's really important. And that's different than desktop software or hosted software. So hosted software would be desktop software that you can access usually through a VPN, a virtual private network. That's not really working in the cloud. Some people will say it is, but I disagree because it's not a cloud-based package. And when you have desktop software, you don't get the integrations, meaning you can't connect as many things to it electronically. You don't get mobile apps. So mobile apps don't exist for desktop products. Xero and QBO and a lot of these other third-party apps have mobile products. So my example of kids sports, right? Like my kids are both big athletes. We are on the road constantly. I am in the car all the time. I can use those little chunks of time to do client work because I have mobile apps. So whether you pick QBO or Xero, I mean, I would never, ever, ever advise anybody to use desktop. I'd say you've got to pick one of those two.
And so how do you buy that? The two that how would she go about purchasing those? I know the answer, but tell us.
Yeah. So for Xero, you would just go to Xero.com and buy a login and get an account. I mean, if you have a practice, you can sign up for a practice, like an advisor partnership, or you can do that with QBO as well. Each of those companies has different requirements. I know that you're very good about spelling those out for the group. So I know you got that listed somewhere, but if you are starting a practice, you should be qualified to get a partner account, and
Right.
you just sign up. And if you need, for your clients, depending on how you're going to be billing your clients, whether the subscriptions are going through you or through the client, you may need to put in your credit card. But it's really that easy. And that's one thing too about cloud-based software is these are all monthly subscriptions. So if you pick one and you don't like it, you just stop paying for it.
Okay.
Back in the
Right.
back in the
That's a good
day,
point.
yeah, back in the day. I say back in the day because I've been doing accounting for over 20 years. Back in the day, you would invest in software, right? Like you would buy a desktop package and you might pay a few $100s for it. If you were buying point of sale software or bigger business software, it would be maybe thousands of dollars. You didn't want to leave it because you'd invested all this money in it. These days, when you're paying for things on subscription, if something doesn't work, you just stop paying for it. So that could be your general ledger. It could be the point of sale system your client uses. It could be, a document management system. All of these are monthly subscriptions. So there's a lot of flexibility when you pick cloud-based software.
Awesome. Yeah, and I do want to emphasize every once in a while someone chimes in and it's like, how much does it cost to like buy QBO? And like us in this group, like you should not be buying QBO, especially if you're just dipping your toe in and maybe you want to like go through the basic certification of one of these products. That you can do that for free as if you have an accountant log on, and you can create an accountant log on, and she's right on the website, bookkeepingsidehustle.com. There are instructions about how to do that. So like I always like try to catch those comments about like, I hear QuickBooks costs $395. No, 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 no. That's different QuickBooks. The online ones are free to get started with. So, all right. Well, Michelle, that's hopefully answers your question. We have one from Lila saying, what are your marketing tips for getting your first client?
Yeah. So, I talk a lot about how when you have a virtual practice, you can get clients anywhere. But I think those first few clients, it's easier if it's local. Just to get your feet in the door, just to get some experience. I have found great success with small business groups, small business associations. There's one here in New Orleans called Stay Local, which is a group of locally owned small businesses. So I've gone, and I did this a lot in the beginning. I would go and do lunch and learns, and we would talk about tax tips. So just very basic tax stuff, like not anything complicated, but things like if you want to take a mileage deduction, you need to keep a log of your mileage throughout the year. Meals are only half deductible. Just very simple tax tips. Those tend to bring a lot of people in. You could do something on accounting. You could just be a participant in some of these networking events. So, yes, I really like the idea of getting your first few clients from in-person meetings. In these networking groups. I think it's much harder to do when you're just starting. It's much harder to do it virtually. But I know there are people out there who will probably start chiming in and be like, I've, gotten 10 clients virtually and never set a foot in a meeting.
Well, and as soon as you get that client, and even in your experience, like you go to the meeting, it's fun, you get your adult interaction, but you treat them virtual after that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
If you want to grab a coffee and talk business, like you can still follow up with them, but you don't have to, and you're going to be doing 99%, if not all of it, after that first meeting. Afterwards, for me personally, all of my clients were, not all of my first clients were definitely like from my part of Virginia. They were, people that not good friends, but people that I was acquainted with. I don't know if y'all from the 80s know like Kevin Bacon, and there was this game that was like how many degrees to Kevin Bacon. That's kind of how I think about it. It's like, I think you should think about like 1 to 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon for your first couple of clients. And then when you're a rock star, you'll get that person that's like 6 degrees away from you who you would never have encountered otherwise, but that finds you because of a web search or something. But that's not going to happen on your first client.
Yeah. No,
cool.
No. And that's a good point. Like, just putting the word out there to friends and family, like this is something I'm doing. Just, people can't refer you unless they know what you're doing. So you have to tell people what you're doing.
Right.
And then once you start to get clients, it's kind of a snowball effect. I'm sure you've seen this. And other folks online have like the first one's the hardest. The second one's a little bit easier. And then it gets a lot easier.
Awesome. We're going to go to the next question, but while I have a break, I'm going to say if you have a question, chime in now in the comments section under the video. Okay. Nisa asks, what are some good basic services to offer when you're first starting out?
So bank reconciliation, I mean, that's the basis of all bookkeeping, right? Is bank reconciliation. Okay. Because if you think about the way a small business operates, probably 90 to 95% of their financial transactions go through a bank account or a credit card account. So that's critical. So bank reconciliation, accounts payable is something that's pretty easy to outsource to bookkeepers. So you can either do it the old-fashioned way, which is, processing checks, or you can use an app like Bill.com. And Bill.com makes it really easy to do that. And then payroll as well. So payroll, I will say this. I have an advanced degree. I have a CPA. I would never, ever in 100 years manually process payroll. Ever. Ever.
Okay, it's like that, listen.
Yeah, that's like the highest risk, lowest reward proposition there is manually processing payroll, because bad things can happen really fast. But what I do is I use an app to do that. So Gusto is my preferred payroll app. ADP is another one. Paychex is another one. I like Gusto the best. It's pretty reasonably priced. They will, like on the bookkeeping side, you will enter client time, or you can even get your client to enter their own time. You can get the client to do most of the work. And somebody pushes a button and all these things just happen. Like money gets moved to the employee's account. the W-2 gets created, the payroll tax returns are filed, all for, you know, a tidy little monthly sum. It's well worth it to use the package. But that's, you know, any small business that has employees has to use some kind of payroll system. So you can be the conduit for that. Yeah. So I'd say like just traditional bank reconciliation, payables, and payroll would be the three top services. Okay.
Payroll management, not payroll calculation.
No.
Yes. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Hope y'all are all listening to all this. Let's see. Okay, Emmy asks, my question is how do you what's the onboard process like for clients?
So this can be really fun. It depends. Okay, so I'll say this. It really depends on where you are in the life cycle of your practice. So if you're at the point where you're onboarding a couple of clients a month, it's worth the time to build in some automation. If you're just starting, you can probably do it manually, right? Like if you're adding one a month or so, you can say, okay, well, here's our process. So on the very basic end, your onboarding process could look like an engagement letter. You should always have some kind of an engagement letter. An engagement letter is the contract for services between you and the client. It does not have to be complicated, but it needs to say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm not going to do. And how much, this is how much I'm going to charge you for it. So that all the expectations are laid out, right? So that can be a Word document that you email to the client and they sign it and email it back. I use, for most of mine, I use DocuSign, so it's electronic signature. There's a cost to that, but to me it's much easier because the client can just click, and sign. There on the high end, like the sexy software side, there's something called Practice Ignition that runs that for you, where you upload your template engagement letters, and then and the signing is done electronically, but it also will collect fees for you. So that's kind of the spectrum of engagement letters. And then once you've got an engagement letter signed, you've got to get the client's data over to you. So again, on the simple side, it could be something like, here's my checklist. I need these bank statements, these federal ID number, tax returns, whatever. It's just a simple checklist. And your client can send it to you a multitude of ways. If you're local, they can drop it off. I don't do that, but there are people I know that have practices where their clients still show up with stuff. They can send it back to you. They can email it. And then, so you talk about what is an onboarding process? Like, what is the timeline for onboarding? For me, onboarding starts when an engagement letter is signed, and it goes to the point where we're doing recurring work. So that is getting all the client data, that is converting the client data. So if you've got historical information that needs to be brought into the system, that's part of onboarding. And I even think of cleanup as being onboarding too. So that whole spectrum of services, until you get to the point where you're like, okay, now we're just going to do monthly work. Everything in between to me is onboarding. And I talked about this at a conference last year. Like, that's where clients are wowed or discouraged, because that process, if it takes a long time, client's going to get frustrated. You're going to get frustrated. Like, you should be really focused on shortening that timeline as much as possible, because it's where you're going to spend most of your time with that client. Then when you get to the recurring stuff, that's easy, right? But that onboarding and getting the client to the point of recurring work is where clients get annoyed, and where they wish they stayed where they were. So make an effort to really shorten that down as much as possible. Okay,
there's a kind of a follow on to this. I'll read the question. It says, how much do people charge for onboarding? I think that's kind of interesting way of phrasing it. I don't think of it like that personally. I don't know how you think about this idea of like charging for onboarding.
So
how do you answer that?
So we do usually charge a setup fee. That's what I call it, a setup fee. Which is getting the client data in, not necessarily cleaning it up. Like, that's something different. So getting client data in, creating a chart of accounts. We include in that setup fee, and I'll be honest, like I charge usually about $500 for it, unless it's a very, very complex client. That includes a training session, so virtual training for the client. So if I have somebody I'm putting on Xero and they're going to be doing a lot of their own invoicing out of Xero, for example,
Right.
like I'll make sure that we do a 30-minute Zoom on how to use Xero. So that setup fee includes not just what we're doing on our back end, but also a little bit of training.
Okay. Awesome. I'll chime in with one thing that, well, maybe this will kind of go, someone's asking about like all these different like technology and apps, like the price is kind of adding up. One free thing for onboarding, I think it's called Hello Sign. Hello Sign. Anyway, I think that's a software where you get 3 signed documents for free per month. And I think for a beginning bookkeeper, like, and for someone like me who's not trying to be huge, that more than meets my needs. And if I needed to, like, I don't know, if I decided one month to like sign 10 clients, I would obviously just pay for the software, because by then, like, your volume is like covering those costs. But lots of these softwares, y'all, have kind of like a beginner package, like Zoom as a way to communicate with your clients. And if you have the basic package, it's free. When you want to start adding people or doing different like recordings and stuff, that's gonna. But I have found my nature is to be very like cost aware, and so I'm always looking for the free. I try to stay away from like anything that's going to be like a monthly hit. So that's just a comment on that. But there was a kind of a follow-up question on that. Julie asks, I'm brand new, but I feel myself wanting to spend all my money on technology. What are the absolute musts from the beginning and what can wait? Like HubDoc, online bill pay, secure hotspot, DocuSigns. Like, does she need to pay for all those? What's the musts? What's can wait?
I mean, really, you can do a lot with just a good general ledger, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, when we're talking about this onboarding, like to your point about softwares, you know, you can do a lot with a Google Sheet. I mean, to be frank, like you really can. So there are ways to do it. Now, I love apps. I love apps, but I'm also equally conscious of the monthly fee, because I run lean. I run a very lean practice. I call it a lifestyle practice. Like, I'm much more interested in hiking and cooking for my children than I am at work, you know, working 60 hours a week. And so the way to free me up from working so much is to cut costs. Like, if you just run it lean. So I don't know that you need necessarily all of those things. It really depends on what you think you're going to be doing. So you need a general ledger package. I'm looking over at the screen where I can see your question. HubDoc can wait. I mean, until you're getting to the point of like high volume. So something like HubDoc or auto entry, those are awesome packages. Like they'll OCR your documents and put them into the general ledger package. That's great. But until you have enough of a volume where that really makes sense, I mean, your bank feeds are going to be a way to automate that data anyway. So it just depends on where you are in the life cycle of your practice. And I saw your question about a hotspot. So like I had a hotspot for a very long time because I traveled so much, and then I realized it had been about 6 months since I had used it. Now phones are so fast, your phone can be your hotspot. So, and plus also like public Wi-Fi, I know that people some have some issues with public Wi-Fi, but public Wi-Fi is available everywhere. So on the occasion that you can get Wi-Fi on an airplane. So like on the occasion that I can't get some kind of Wi-Fi, I can use my phone as a hotspot. So I ended up dropping my hotspot, and I travel a lot. I've worked all over the world, and I don't have a hotspot anymore. So that was like $50 a month, and I didn't use it.
There you go, y'all. I hear it. Told y'all she knew her stuff. Kristen asks, client security is a concern for me. What secure file transfer sites for client information uploads and downloads do you recommend?
There are a few that are really expensive. I use Box. for mine. I send secure box links to my clients. DocuSign. So I do get some payment information via DocuSign. DocuSign is secure, so we do get credit card information on DocuSign. Yeah, I mean, just look out there. Like when we think about software, browser-based software, the most important thing is to guard your passwords, sign up for two-factor authentication. Like if you do those things, it's really, really hard to get to the information. You know, these companies have, if we could access anything on Amazon Web Services, or if they get broken into, like the CIA has their information on AWS. Intuit has information on AWS. So like, I'm okay with using a public storage place versus like a VPN, so a virtual private network. I think those are probably less secure. I'm sure there are people that are going to argue with me, but I'm fine with something like a box, or if you want to go the next level, something like ShareFile. But those get expensive.
What does AWS mean?
Amazon Web Services. So that's Amazon's data storage. So like the big software companies have, instead of having their own servers, are almost universally moving to these dedicated servers, and probably most of them are Amazon servers. Isn't that crazy? Do you remember? I know I don't think you're as old as me, but do you remember when Amazon started and all they did was sold books?
Yeah,
you know, that was like in the early 2000s. They run the world. Amazon runs the world.
Yeah,
and it's so crazy. Like
you heard it here.
You think about, you're like, oh, they sold books, and then they started selling other stuff, and then at some point you're here, they're building server space. You're like, that's never going to work. And then they're like, well, we'll start streaming video, and you're like, nobody's going to watch that. And now you're like, you know, everything is Amazon, but it's funny.
They might start offering bookkeeping.
You know,
everyone else is.
Everybody else is.
Yeah. All right. Nisa asked, in terms of accounts receivable, what services could a bookkeeper offer clients?
Oh, account receivable. That's hard. Accounts receivable is the hardest thing to outsource. If you think about it, you're asking customers and clients for money. Like that's a really subjective thing. I can do accounts payable for a client because the vendor sends me a bill and that's what I owe, right? So like I can do that objectively. But for receivables, I mean, there's just that's a client relationship thing, and you don't always know that, you know, maybe somebody didn't put their time in, and so that's getting. I'm trying to think, like before I say I never. I'm trying to think if there's anybody we do receivables for, and I can't think of one client I have that I do receivables for.
I have two comments on that, Nisa. One is you could bill it as like a training option. So a lot of these softwares have really cool, make your invoice look cool and put your logo on it and all this stuff that's like way back kind of behind, like deep in the software. Like I use QBO, and so I know that there's like these different templates, and I know you can upload a logo, and you probably have to get it the right size and all this annoying stuff, and you could like rock their world by getting them really set up to, okay, here's how you enter your customer, you put all this information in, and then boom, 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 and they're going to be like, oh, that's so much easier than what I was doing, which was like handwriting on this like one little form I made a long time ago. So that's kind of one way to maybe say you dabble in receivables, is like training the client to make it as easy as possible. The second thing I want to say is, when I think about doing accounts receivable, I think that's like the most, so that's where the money's coming in. So your clients need to get money as quickly as possible. And I think that you're really going to add time if you try to do it, because they're having to give you all, like to give you the information you need, they're pretty much doing about 98% of invoicing. Whether it's typing it in an Excel file, just teach them how to type it in the software. So I just don't think there's a lot of efficiency in asking someone to do their receivables, because if you're not on it daily, like, then you're going to start to have a cash flow problem, and they're much more incentivized for them to like go get their money. So those are my thoughts.
I totally agree with you, Kate. I totally agree. Like you become the roadblock between them and their money, because you're waiting on them, they're waiting on you. And that's a great idea, to create like a an invoicing package. So say I'll set up your invoicing and I'll train you on it, and then slap on the bottom, go get them, you know, and they go do it. That's way more efficient than trying to do it yourself. It's nearly impossible for an outsourced person to do accurate invoicing.
Okay, I think that's how I feel about it. That would probably be something that y'all could charge, like, you know, we talk about value pricing. That would be like a great hourly thing. Like, you know, I'm going to give you an hour of my time till we get this invoice exactly the way you want it, and we memorize all your little paragraphs that you want in there, yada yada. Okay, beginner bookkeeper pitfalls that people run into at the beginning. I know you meet a lot of new bookkeepers with your zero life. What are some mistakes people make?
Well, I'll tell you one that I see and one that I did myself, and that's trying to choose a niche before at the very beginning. So like, and I know that there's probably a lot of talk about this. Like, okay, if you're going to be building your practice, first pick your niche. How are you supposed to know what you want to do? How are you supposed to know what kind of accounting you want to do? I mean, when I started, I was like, oh, I'm in New Orleans. I love to eat. I'm going to do restaurants. There are plenty of restaurants in New Orleans. Terrible idea.
Restaurants are the worst.
Restaurants are the worst.
Restaurants are the worst.
They make the least amount of money.
Restaurants.
They're the most
They always close.
They always close. Like, I was like, at some point I had 2 or 3 restaurants. I was like, I'm never doing restaurants again. So what if I would have branded myself as a restaurant accountant, not knowing that? You know, I would have named my practice Amanda's Restaurant Accounting. Like, then what? You know, I'd had Amanda's Restaurant LLC, you know, like.
Yeah.
And then, so I am of the mindset that you kind of go in as a generalist. Now, I do believe in verticalizing. I absolutely do. But I don't think you can make that decision until you start. Like, how you know, how are you supposed to know this? How are you supposed to know what the market is for that? So, yeah. So I would say to go in and get, I know what I'm saying is like probably 180 degrees from what a lot of people are saying. Go take any client that you can for the beginning. In the beginning, go get whatever client you want.
It's Kevin Bacon, y'all. 1 degree to Kevin Bacon. Who is the 1 degree away from
That's
you?
That's right. Get who you can. And then when you've got 3, 4, 5 clients, then you can say, okay, well, you know what? I really liked this thing. Let me go find some more of it. I have taken the time to figure out how to do this thing. Like for me, maybe it was law firm accounting. It might be construction. It might be nonprofit accounting. Whatever those things are of your generalist clients, then you focus. But I wouldn't, it's impossible to say, okay, day 1 of being a new bookkeeper, I'm going to be the craft beer dude.
Yeah.
You can't.
Okay. And you did that. You thought restaurants were going to be your thing.
I did. I thought.
Well, at least you didn't pick restaurant accounting by Amanda.
Yeah, I did. And I never, so I ended up with law firms and real estate brokerages. Those are my 2 big verticals now. I didn't go out thinking, I want to be a law firm accountant. I didn't think that. That's kind of what came across my plate. And I was like, I'm good at this. And there's, you know, kind of weird stuff in law firm accounting. But I didn't go into it thinking that's what I thought I was going to be a restaurant. I love eating. I was like, this is New Orleans. This will be so easy, Kate.
I know.
And then I got into it. I'm like, this is the worst.
It's the worst.
This is the worst ever. I will say this. There are people who make a good living in restaurant accounting. One of them is my good friend, Kristen Serraldo. Like she's a QBO chick who does bars and restaurants. If that's a vertical that anybody in the group is interested in, look for her. She does some training for us for elephants sometimes. She's awesome. But it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me.
Okay. You just get to still go eat there and not have to worry about selling yourself.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Leaving business cards strategically as you walk in. Okay. Timmy asks, if starting as a side hustle, how do you tell your potential client that you're doing this on the side and not full time? So questions will be answered in the evenings and weekends. Yeah. So you pretty much dived in right away. Like you kind of treated it as full time right away. But I'm sure you've met people like me and others who, like my favorite, my newest client is. I want to kiss him because he takes 7 a.m. calls because that's my primo time.
Yeah.
And not everyone would do that, but it's the way we're working together is he wants to be able to keep his like business and selling and growing his business like during his meaty hours. And so I just kind of, and I don't even know how I brought it up. I just sort of proposed, I could talk this, and this times. And one of them is always like really early and he picks it.
Yeah.
But what would you say to Timmy about just kind of the communicating with potential clients about the fact that you're not big bad accounting law firm with the big brick building and 10 employees? How do you communicate that?
I think that's really, you have to be really delicate. Like I wouldn't go into a new client meeting or a lead meeting and saying, hey, just so you know, I'm only doing this on the side. I have another job that's more important, because that's what it sounds like when you tell a client, this is a side thing. I wouldn't say that, because it sounds to the client like, oh, well, they have another job that's more important to them, or they don't have the capacity, or they don't have the client base to actually, like, the experience to actually make this a full-time job. So I'd be very careful about how much I'd disclose and how much honesty and transparency I'd put out there. I would make it about communication expectations. I would say, you know, we meaning me, we try to respond to our clients within 24 hours. And sometimes our days are really busy, so that might be, you know, outside traditional business hours. I would leave it at that. I just wouldn't say I have another job and this is what I do. I would frame it with expectations, you know, this, that, and the other. And if you can get away for a lunch hour and take a call or respond to an email, I would do that during the middle of the day if possible. I will say this, there is, if you use Gmail, there's something called Boomerang. Has anybody used that? Boomerang is where you can like schedule emails to go out in advance. So like, let's say you're doing something early morning, you could have it go out to the client at noon or something. So you can use an email scheduler so it looks like you're responding in regular business hours.
So I'm curious. I don't use any sort of a scheduler, and I have never done that. It's never really been a problem to me, but also maybe I am still wanting to be a little bigger than I am, so maybe that's my problem. Do you think, like, if someone sends an email at 5:30 in the morning, or if it's a night owl person, if they're sending something at 11 p.m. at night, is that something I should think about trying to avoid? Does that seem unprofessional, or what do you think?
You know, I don't know. I can't give you a solid answer. I will say this. I do that all the time, because if I'm thinking about something, I want to respond right away while I'm thinking about it, because I'm going to forget. So I often respond to clients all hours, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning or midday on the weekends. I do it a lot, and nobody's ever said to me. Now, I would say the worry there, like the risk there, is that your clients are going to start to expect responses as that quickly on the weekends and evenings. On
Saturday, yeah.
Right. So you're setting them up. So I think that's more of a risk than that it looks unprofessional that you're working, you know, too much, or you're working outside of regular business hours.
Timmy, something else just to kind of think about is maybe your first couple of clients are like fellow side hustlers as well. Like if you know some like super smart, ambitious people who like they have a 9-to-5 job, but you know that like in 2 years, like there's no way that person's working for someone else. Grow with them, and they're going to need a bookkeeper who works and takes meetings and takes calls at 8 o'clock at night or at 6 in the morning, because they have the same constraints that you do. So that might be just another tip. I have noticed that you know, people who have side hustles don't make as much as people who have companies that are, you know, 40 hours plus a week. So, but you just have to use your judgment about how successful you think that person might be, and getting to grow with a company. First of all, they don't have bad habits, so you're like training them well, and just how exciting to be able to be like that right hand. And that's what entrepreneurs really, really need anyway.
And also, like, I think it's a great point, Kate. Like, also first of all, everybody has a side hustle now, right? Like, that's the way the economy is changing. Everybody has a side. I have a side hustle to my side hustle. Yeah. So everybody's got a side hustle. So yeah, that's a great idea. And then like, in general, the folks that have these side businesses, it's super easy bookkeeping. It's
Yeah,
usually they're selling time, a lot of times, not always, selling their time, or consulting. Like there's not inventory to manage, there's not complex payroll to manage. So if you can get
right.
a bunch of these smaller startup clients that are, graphic designers or bloggers, you can do them pretty quickly. So you can make a margin on something that's maybe $100, $200, $300 a month rather than
Right.
1,000, you know?
Oh, and for sure over time, to me, like, I mean, I was terrible, and I'm sort of slow by nature. Um, but that very first bookkeeping client I had, I made like $0, even though like technically I got paid. But that's the beauty of what we do. And there's like if you're in like accounting nerd groups on Facebook and stuff, there's like memes about how like you're like when people hire us, they're hiring Amanda because she's 20 years. Like, okay, you know what? You can hire me and pay me, or you can go do it yourself. Pick your poison. I'm gonna, Amanda's gonna cost X amount, and if you do it yourself, you're gonna be free. And they have to decide. And she's gonna be able to do something fast, and the business owner is not. And she used to not do it fast, and now she does.
That's true.
And so that I think in this business in particular, especially, there's a lot of people in here who are complete blank slates, and don't be discouraged. It's a profession like any other, and everyone started their first day somehow, and it will be hard to command a high value per your time if you're brand new, but you'll get there. And the software is geared towards like helping you do that.
Can I say something about that to you, Kate? Like, I
Sure.
see a lot of stuff on social media about how easy it is to run a bookkeeping or accounting practice. If you just buy this course and give somebody a bunch of money, they'll do. It's not. Like, it takes work. It takes time. It takes process. Like, there's no quick
Yeah.
way to jump to a huge practice. It just doesn't happen that way. And I think people, it makes me so mad. I get so angry when I see these consultants, and I won't name names, but with their clickbaity ads of girls in bikinis, and you should just do this, give me some money and I'll make you a 7-figure practice. Like, that isn't how it works. That isn't how it works. The way it works is chipping away day after day, week after week. And I don't mean to make it sound like it's, like hiking, the Appalachian Trail. It's not like that, but it just takes constant attention and effort. And there's no quick fix to it. So save your money. Don't buy one of these courses. Just spend a little bit of time focused on develop your processes. That's huge. Like, develop your processes. And when I say develop processes, that means writing down on a Google document or a Google sheet, here are the steps to do the things I need for this, whatever it is. Here are the steps I need for payroll. Every time I do payroll, we're going to do these 10 things. Every time I do a month-end bank reconciliation, it's these 10 steps. Because then you can start to build efficiency and build automation, and maybe at some point hire somebody to do something for you, and you have that template for them. So that's a good effort. That's a good use of time, I think.
I'll comment. Part of me thinks that, like, one of the reasons why I want to be a little bit bigger is whenever I think about like commanding like an implied high dollar per hour rate, although I've pretty much gotten away from any sort of hourly stuff. I realize that if you're too small, it's kind of hard to remember everything. And so, like, there's just the sense of like, my husband flies a jet, and like he's really experienced, and like he's not good at flying a jet if he takes like 3 or 4 weeks off. It's just something about like he calls it the monkey skills, and there's a little bit of monkey skills to bookkeeping. It's so weird, and I'm like, where was that, or how did I do that again? And if I had just a little more like work to do, it would like stick in better. So that's just kind of a little tip. Whenever I was having like only 1 or 2 clients, it was so frustrating because like I wasn't having to serve them every day, and so there was like this like inertia
Yep.
of like getting back going. And then like after an hour, I'm like, okay, I got it. But that like, man,
Yeah.
I just wasted an hour.
Then you've got another 30 days to wait until you do it again. I know, it's same thing. Like,
yeah.
Like, you know, you get into a client, you're like, okay, let me remember. You know, what does this check payee mean? Okay, let me go find it, or whatever it is, you know? Yeah, to your point.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, so you know this, I have a training company and I have a consulting company too, but I still have my accounting practice, and I keep that accounting practice specifically for that reason, like to keep my mind in it. Because if I didn't, how would I train anybody if I didn't actually do it every month or every couple of weeks? You know?
Right. I have another one here. Kristen says, how do you transfer information? Do you wait for client to submit their bank statements, or do you get virtual read-only access to their bank accounts?
We get read access to the bank accounts because
Me too.
I'm not waiting.
I'm requiring it. I'm not doing it anymore.
Yep.
Without read-only access.
It slows the whole thing down. Right? If you have to wait on a client. Yep, because if they didn't have time to do their own bookkeeping, they're not going to have time to download stuff and email it to you. I mean, I do like HubDoc is a good solution to that. There's a price for it. HubDoc will go grab bank statements for you and check images depending on the bank.
Why pay when you can get it for free?
But yeah, if you can get virtual read-only access, that's good enough. It's just, I mean, I will say this. I've seen a lot of sides of accounting over the last 20 years. The biggest holdup to automation and efficiency is the bank. That is the biggest holdup. Like trying to, log in, and then you're like, oh, they changed the password, or they or they got a ping.
It's the worst.
You know, Chase pings you with a code. I mean, if somebody could really solve that, like really solve it, that would be huge.
Who are y'all computer developers on this call? Y'all go do it. Bookkeepers will pay for your product.
Yeah, I mean, HubDoc is great. I will say HubDoc is great. But it's kind of pricey. It's like, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. It's like $20 per client. That's
$20. Yeah.
That's a lot.
All right, y'all. I have one more, I think, submitted question. So we're coming close to an hour anyway. So type your question now, or we're about to wrap up. Let me just double check my little sheet here. Package. I think this top one we didn't answer really, Amanda. Package pricing. How do you create pricing for monthly clients?
So I usually try to come up with like basically 3 different options, like a small, a medium, and a large, or a, whatever, bronze, silver, gold.
Yeah.
3 different
small
options.
fry, medium fry, large fry.
Yeah. And just in my head, I will say this, going back to the beginning bookkeeper stuff, this is trial and error. Like you're going to offer pricing to your first client, and then you're going to realize it's probably too low. Probably if they accept it, it's probably too low. If they don't, then maybe you're too high, and then you're going to revise it. And then you're going to say, okay, well, this is my new package. So again, you have to give yourself permission to figure this stuff out. Don't be so hard on yourself that don't spend hours and hours researching. And I mean, you just go for it and then revise it if you need to. So I try to do like here's what quarterly bank reconciliation basics looks like. Here's monthly accounting services, and then here's like full controller CFO kind of thing. And I mean, your group can figure out what those variations look like that makes sense for them. Maybe it includes AP. I don't know. Maybe it's payroll.
I was struggling with trying to figure out, because I don't feel like I do that many different things within like the bookkeeping world to come up with a 3-package thing. I have never presented a proposal like that, but I'm kind of wanting to get there. But just quarterly and monthly, there's 2 right there.
Yep, there you go.
So yeah. And I know that lots of the like psychology say is most people pick the middle one anyway, or something. So
so build the middle one out to be what you want. Make the low one look really skimpy and the high one look really expensive, and they'll end up in the middle.
Is anyone on this call who has an accounting question? I want to play some Jeopardy music in the background. I was going to say, we've got like a legit accountant here, people, and don't be scared to ask that. Like, I have a chart that I keep up on my little, cork board that is just like, it's a T account for assets, and it's like usually has a, the balance is usually positive on the debit side, and what increase, it's like, and I've had to put accounting classes in the past, but it's still good for me whenever I'm having to like chew on a head scratcher of a problem. Like, okay, which one? Okay,
I'm looking.
Gonna
it's
go.
funny. It's funny. I'm trying to find what I'm looking for. Hold on a second. Might be in a folder. I do the same thing, and I've been doing this for 20 years. So let me see if I can find this. These notes for you to show you.
While she's looking for that, someone needs to design a mouse pad for us all that we can all buy from your little eBay store or whatever, or your online store, that's like the little basic, some sort of basic accounting concepts.
I'm trying to find this. So I told you one of my verticals is brokerage, real estate brokerages. And so I do a lot of work with Loft 47. I can't find it right now. I don't know where I put it. I pulled them down to show somebody, and I must have stuck them in a pile. Anyway, so Loft 47 is an add-on for real estate brokerages, and it has a pretty complex Xero integration. I wrote, I've been doing this for a long time, T accounts to the flow of the integration. So like when an invoice is created, what happens with the integration? And it was like, debit accounts receivable, credit the revenue. And like, I literally had T accounts all over this 2 pages of copy paper. So I do that all the time. I like to see stuff visually, especially integrations.
Right.
So if you're starting to get into either a specific vertical or even like something like Bill.com or something that's a general app, I always map out integrations for clients, always. Because it's back to your point of like trying to remember things every month. Like I will put that as part of their file, is like, okay, they use Xero and then they're using, whatever packages, what's the information that's coming in, how's it flow? Like I'm literally map it out.
Right. I just drew T accounts just to double check because I just integrated my first client with Gusto. Like all of my own, hired his first employee. He's on Gusto now. And Gusto support is awesome. I'm a Gusto fan. And they help you map your QuickBooks accounts. So it happened like the first time, and I was like so excited. The next morning I woke up and I was like, okay, this supposedly did something magic. And I went on and I logged it. And so I'm seeing everything hit the financial statements, but I drew it out. Okay, so the employee got paid, so this is what happened to wages, and then here's the tax, and I drew it out. And Julie says, and I had an owner tell me yesterday that his bookkeeper told him that since he pays everything on his American Express, he doesn't have to keep receipts anymore, but he wouldn't he still need the receipt showing the details of the purchase?
Okay, so first of all, that's a tax requirement, right? It's not a bookkeeping requirement, it's a tax requirement. So if your client gets audited, the IRS is going to want to see receipts. I don't know why. I don't know what the IRS's position is on credit card statements, but I suspect that that's not sufficient. So yeah, you would want receipts of the purchase. Now, if they want to just hold on to them in case, like throw them in a box and just hold on to them in case he needs it, it's great. But I would tell the client, you really should keep the receipts and let them make the decision whether they're going to or not. Yeah. I mean, why? You're going to have an Amex charge for Amazon. That could be,
you don't know anything.
Makeup, right? It could be anything. Yeah. So how is that qualifying it to be deductible?
Kristen also asks, how would you account for clients' personal from business expenses if they don't have separate bank accounts?
So if they pull personal money, yeah.
No, if they don't have separate bank accounts at all, if they're running their business and don't have bank accounts.
Well, they need a business bank account. So I mean,
tell them to grow up.
Well, if they really want to have a business, they need to have a business bank account. What does it cost you? $10 a month? You need to have a business bank account. Maybe not even anything.
My business bank account doesn't cost me anything.
I would tell them this is true. Like the IRS can disallow deductions when funds are commingled. So again, going back to the Amazon example, like if you are running a business and you want to take business deductions on that business, you have to run it like a business, and that includes a business bank account. If you don't, I mean, I know Julie's probably like, I'm sorry, Kristen's probably like, I've told him 100 times and he still won't do it. Can you just please answer my question, Amanda, so I know how to handle it? So, I mean, it's hard. Like if all right, so QBO and Xero both run off of bank feeds. So you have to connect a bank account to be able to do the accounting. You can't do the accounting by just pulling out the pieces in either of those packages. Those are, you know, QBO I think QuickBooks does have like a self-employed package that might sort of do that, where it's just like, this is personal, this is business. But a real accounting package is going to require that you reconcile the entire bank account, because that's how the balance sheet is built. So, I mean, it gets hard. Like, it's a mess.
I've done this. So what I would do, this is how I handled it. I created a dummy bank account, Julie. I had my client download their personal bank account into their own Excel file. So they exported into CSV. They deleted everything. So they have to be the one to tell you, right? Anyway, so delete everything, send me the data, and I uploaded all that data because I'm not going to type in anything like that. I was able to upload everything into this dummy bank account, and I think I called it business expenses on personal account. And that allowed me to get it all in quickly. It acted like a bank feed. I categorized everything. And then at the end, I moved it all to owners. I moved the total to owners' contribution to the business. And then now, but all this is happening saying they've agreed to go get a business bank account. Like, I don't think it's a good practice to do all the way, but lots of businesses start this way. So it's not a silly question, Kristen. Many businesses start with like, you know, just dipping their toe in the water and like, yeah, I'll have a couple. Oh, okay, this is happening. Okay, what was those expenses I had again? So that's how I did it, kind of efficiently. Also, she's talking about, to be a business, you really need to keep things separated, not just from the IRS, but from legal standpoints too. Like, if you want any sort of a protection, if it looks like you're treating your entity as a real corporate entity, then you'll have a lot more standing than if it's like, okay, no, we're suing Amanda personally because she's clearly the one who this business. The business doesn't have the business doesn't have its own corporate identity. So that's another thing you can tell him. I think that's all the questions, and it's 3, so I'm going to let Amanda go. Someone asked when we're going to do. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Hello? Can you hear me, anybody? Shoot. Maybe we should just say goodbye. All right. What's going on? All right. This is great. Talk to y'all later. Sayonara.